Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Our topic right now is present truth in Deuteronomy. Quite a challenge, but it's an excellent book to do this one. Tonight's lesson is to love the Lord your God. And if you'll stick with me, we're going to talk about the difference between proof texting and using the Bible as the text as an evidence. Everybody says that proof texting is a bad idea, but everybody tries to use it sometimes. And when we hear a Bible text being used, how do we know whether it's proof texting or whether it's legitimate use of that text? Well, because of something that happens in this lesson, we have to look into that. So stay with me. Also, I'd like to remind you, if you will press like, the more people, the more likes that this gets, the more people who will have a chance to view this. Our viewership is up a great deal, and I want to thank all of my viewers for doing that, everyone who presses the like button. And of course, if you will subscribe, you'll be sure to get all of these. And finally, if you click share, there's the opportunity for more people to see this. If you value it and want to share it, please do so. Now, to love the Lord your God. That sounds a little strange, but those words actually come from Deuteronomy, the book of the law. We don't think of the law and love as natural pairs, but all law, legitimate law, is for the purpose of safeguarding relationships. Now think about that. If relationships break down, that's where laws take over. If I assault you, our relationship is in bad trouble, and that's where the law has a penalty. It wants to keep those relationships at least civil. If I steal from you, if I defraud you in some way, if I lie under oath, there are different ways that it hurts, it damages the relationships between people. And the laws are there because relationships fail. In fact, most of the time, if your relationship remains healthy, the law won't enter in at all. Now, again, we're talking about legitimate laws. Obviously, people can make laws about all sorts of things. The primary function of law is to safeguard relationships. And of course, here is the memory text. It's from Deuteronomy 6, verse 5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. This is with all of your being. You shall love the Lord your God. Now, you can't really command love, but this is a direction. It's like telling you to drink plenty of water or something else that is good for you. That's what he's saying. If you want to live in this land, remember Deuteronomy, they're preparing to conquer and enter Palestine, and they've never lived in Canaan, in the promised land. And so he's telling them, here's how you do it. You're no longer being nomadic people. Here's how you do it. You're going to live this way, and that's how you will maintain the relationship with your Creator, and that's how you will make sure that that you are able to stay upon the land. In fact, the fifth commandment even says that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord God gives you. So that's very clear that that's the function of law. To love the Lord your God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is very advanced theology, especially as early as Deuteronomy, because only 40 years before, roughly, when they did Exodus, said, thou shalt have no other gods before thee, just tacitly admitting there were these other gods. Now, that doesn't mean there were, but the people believed it. But what he's telling them now is there is only one God, and that he is our God, okay? And so we have to stick with him. We have to stay with him. He is the one who has redeemed us. He is the one who will maintain us in our land. The Lord our God is one Lord. And here it says, that's the preamble to the other part. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God the Lord is one. You shall love this Lord, the Lord your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You have to understand who it is you're loving. And this is one God. Now, we'll get into the Trinity perhaps later. I know it's a hot issue among some people, but it's not for this study. We just have to move on. It's very interesting because now what does the Lord your God ask of you? Deuteronomy is the book of the law. It's also the book of the covenant, as we're told. And it is, in fact, a book of the covenant, but the covenants have conditions, have laws. But it's interesting because it is about relationship. Look what this says. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? This is Deuteronomy 10:12, a totally different section of Deuteronomy. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you? But to fear the Lord your God. Fear does not mean to be frightened of him, but to respect him, to be in awe of him, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Now, this is, again, it's in Deuteronomy, so this is fairly early. And this is, you can see that this is all about relationship, about maintaining that love relationship with God so that God can continue to protect us. It is not that God is jealous in the one sense. He does say in one place he's a jealous God, but in this particular, it's not because he's not getting back at us because we reject him. It's that rejecting him is like the vacuum cleaner pulling the cord and pulling its plug out of the wall. You have no life apart from God. And if you don't do these things, you will slowly distance yourself from the source of life and you will not survive. And he will not be able to protect them and keep them in the land, which is where they want to be. Now, if you'll take a look, this is so much like Micah 6:8, which is a much later, 500 years later. I put the dates down at the bottom. But notice the parallels there. Hear now, Israel. So Israel is addressed in toto. Then we have Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. So this is corporately and individually God has given them this. What does the Lord your God ask of you? That's what Deuteronomy 10:12 says. Micah 6:8 says, and what does the Lord require of you? What does he ask of you? What does he require of you? You can see that the content is very similar. The intent is very similar. In Deuteronomy 10:12, what does he ask? But he wants to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. And in Micah 6:8, it is something similar, but more simple in its expression, but to do justly. Well, God is a good job. The word just is tzedek, righteousness. And so to walk, to fear the Lord your God and to walk obedience to him is to do justly, to love mercy. If you love him, you will recognize how merciful he is to you, to us, and you will love mercy. And to walk humbly with your God, serve the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, to recognize that who the God is that we are serving is to be humbled. And so it's a very simple thing. He wants you to do the right things, which he's told you how to do, what it is, to love mercy. And I could spend a long time here. C.S. Lewis says that when mercy is separated from justice, it becomes unmerciful, and we see that happening all around us. For example, in one part of the United States right now, there are videos of people going into stores and stealing things. And out of supposed compassion, out of supposed mercy, the government has decided not to enforce laws against stealing. Now, I want to stress for our friends overseas, this is only in a few locations, and it's seen as being unwise, let's put it at least that way, by the majority of my countrymen. But some people think this is merciful. The problem is they're not doing justice, and it has become unmerciful. It's not merciful to those who are stealing, because they're being encouraged to live in ways which will separate them from God and which will separate them from their fellow human beings. And it is not justly because the cost of all that shoplifting, and in some cases we've seen there are thousands of dollars being shoplifted by one or two or a few individuals in one episode. But that cost has to be borne by everyone who buys at that store. Sooner or later, that cost has to come from somewhere. because the company has to pay for those materials. The store has to pay for them, whether the people pay them or not. And so it is not just, it looks merciful to a few, in this case a handful, but it isn't merciful to the many, and it isn't merciful really at all to either of you say. It looks merciful. But anyway, so if you don't know what justice is, if there is no justice, then there is no mercy either. And this is what people forget about. But anyway, there's the similarity. You can see they're very, very similar. That God is wanting to maintain this relationship of love. And the way we do that is he's a just God, and we have to be just to be with him. But he's also a merciful God. And as we learn that and experience it for ourselves in his grace, we want to extend that to others. And then to be humble, to love him with all of our existence, our being, because we recognize what great things he has done for us, the grace that he's given us, and that he has forgiven our sins, because that is also extremely gracious. So there you have those texts. It's fascinating, because this is Deuteronomy, the book of the law. When we, in this day, in this world, think of law, we tend to think of law as limiting, as commanding, as judgmental even. But they saw law as something which kept them in a proper relationship with God and allowed them to continue to enjoy his blessings. So that's why the Israelites loved the law. The law for them was a good thing. We love him because he first loved us. My daughter asked her 6-year-old the other day, why do we love God? And he said, because he first loved us. Apparently he has internalized this already. Deuteronomy talks about what God has done already. We've mentioned this, that the law, whatever the law is, whether it's the 10 Commandments or any other law, comes first because God has done something gracious. Grace precedes law, always. This is the God who led you out of the land of Egypt, out of the bondage of slavery. Therefore, and the law follows. And here we have this in Deuteronomy 4:37. Because he loved your ancestors and chose their descendants after them, he brought you out of Egypt by his presence and his great strength. He made a promise to your ancestors. And that promise comes down to you and all of the descendants of those great people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, where God promised them to give them the land and promised they would be a special people and promised the blessing would come through them. And so because of that, not because you're worthy, not because you've earned it, not because of anything good you've done, but because of the promise he made, and they weren't perfect either. The promise he made to your ancestors. That's why he brought you out. So here we have the book of the law again in Deuteronomy, and it is the code that they're supposed to follow. It's sort of their constitutional law for when they enter the promised land and take possession of the land of promise. But here it begins with this statement of grace once again, and the statement of love. He loved you. He loved your ancestors. And so he promised them. And based on that promise, not on your virtue, not on anything you've earned, but on that reason, he brought you out of Egypt by his presence and his great strength. He's the creator of all. He's the maker of all. He's the strongest of all. And if God wanted to force people to obey him, it would be no big deal. But he does not deal that way with us. And for that, we have to be very grateful. It's another way of realizing that why we love God. And now we have this verse. If you love me, keep my commandments. And here is where I have the problem. Most of these lessons have been really excellently set up, and we've talked about the steps. We're going to talk about those again, the steps of interpretation. But here's one that happens to be a big problem for me. If you love me, keep my commandments. Now, Most people reading this verse, and certainly I did, I felt the same way. Most people reading this verse read it as the Ten Commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. This is used oftentimes as evidence that the law has not passed away. There's plenty of good reason that the law has not passed away. This is not one of them. And this is being used in the lesson as a proof text, and it is being used in error. That is my position. Now, I know I said something rather direct, and you may find it difficult, but I'm going to give you the reasons why I think that and how this has gone about. First of all, remember we had the 3 steps. They start with exegesis. What did he say? Biblical theology. What did he believe? And systematic theology. What does that mean for us today? And of course, the whole purpose of present truth in Deuteronomy, present truth is systematic theology. What is it for me today? What does it mean for me today? How does this direct my life? How does this instruct me? And to do that, we have to get it right. We have to understand what was being said, and we have to understand that is the actual words used, and then we have to understand what the author thought they meant. We talked about face value. In fact, we'll bring that up very quickly. This is John Walton's book, a very excellent definition. To read the passage as the ancient author would have intended and as the ancient audience would have heard it. That's what our goal is. That's how we want to interpret this. So if you love me, keep my commandments. How did the ancient author intend it? In this case, it is John in the Gospel of John, but it's attributed to Jesus. So he's attributing something to Jesus. How did Jesus mean this to be understood? And how do we know? And if it's not the 10 Commandments, why would I say such a thing like that? Why would I go out on a limb and make such a strong statement? Do I believe that those who love God will keep the 10 Commandments? Yes, in the same way that people who love life don't go speeding all the time and don't traffic in drugs and do a lot of other self-destructive things. But that just doesn't happen to be what's being said in this passage. What did he say? And then how did he understand it? Well, here's the thing we have to look at. How did he define it? The word my commandments, that phrase, my commandments, did the author define it? That's a key thing. Did he mean the 10 Commandments by that? If he did, then it's over. I'm mistaken, and the author of the lessons is right, and that's all there is to it. If he says, if you love me, keep my commandments, if he meant the 10 Commandments, then that's what it is. But how can we tell? Well, first of all, there's the word my, the telltale word my. Now, yes, you can say Jesus is part of the Godhead and that he commanded them. It's even possible to maintain that he's the one who spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai and that they were his commandments. But there's also this other problem, and that is, does he define it in the passage? Is it defined locally? And if so, how did he define it? Well, the first part is he doesn't say the commandments or the law. He says, keep my commandments. And the Message, which is another translation, translates it this way. If you love me, show it by doing what I've told you. So Jesus, if according to the Message translation, and again, we need to look which one's correct and how does this work. But if the Message translation is correct, then Jesus may well have said my commandments, but he may have meant show it by doing what I've told you. In other words, I've been your teacher. I've been living with you for 3.5 years. And if you love me, you'll do what I have told you is helpful to do. And so this is directly related, according to the Message, to the person of Jesus himself, what he has told them. And that is reinforced by the notion of my commandments. But that's not enough. That's an inference. It is something that might be. It's a little bit better than speculation, but not a great deal. Anyway, they're not the commandments, they're my commandments. And this is all in the same passage, John 14, John 15. These things I command you, that you love one another. And in fact, several times, something like 4 or 5 times in this whole passage, This is the address that Jesus gives the disciples after the Last Supper. Judas has gone out to go and to summon the priests and to betray Jesus. And Jesus is talking to the 11, and he's preparing them for his death, which they don't see coming. He's warned them. He's warning them again, but they have their minds made up. They're sure that the Messiah is going to lead them to victory, and death is not his death is not a part of that. And so in this long address, John 14 through 17, in fact, it starts at 13, it's nearly 1/4 or 1/5 of the entire book of John. Nearly 1/5 of the entire book of John is spent on this preparation. And repeatedly he says, I command this. This is what I command. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. These things I command you, that you love one another. And this is repeated. His commandment. If you love me, keep my commandments. And here's what they are. Here's what they are. And it's that you love one another as I have loved you. This is my commandment. It's not, those are my commandments. And he doesn't go through the list, which he does in other cases. The rich young ruler, he goes through the second table commandments. There are lots of times he was perfectly aware of what the 10 Commandments say. But he's not applying them here. If you love me, keep my commandments. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. These things I command you, that you love one another. So that is a repeated theme here. So I want to look at the difference between proof texting and using text as evidence, because that is so crucial to understanding how to study the Bible and how to avoid twisting it. And it's not primarily, I'm not presenting this primarily because I want to prevent you from being deceived by others, or that I feel that this is a terrible mistake by the author, because I don't think it's a terrible mistake. I think that he just simply used the wrong text in the wrong way. But there's plenty of evidence for position that love and law go together. We've already talked about some of those, that law exists to protect, good laws exist to protect relationships. And good laws exist to deal with relationships that have broken down. Divorce law, famously for that. But also dissolution of partnerships, fraud. There are all ways in which relationships have broken down. And the law wants to remedy that. And in fact, what the law wants to do by making them illegal is to protect those relationships. Make it, put a disincentive to breaking a relationship. So proof texting begins with a conclusion. Now, I've grayed that out. It's in gray and all that. It's all because the person who's doing this, and I say this, I've mentioned already, I'm not doing this just to criticize others. The big thing is when I do it. The big thing is when you do it to yourself, because we want to form our beliefs. John talks again and again about how it's by believing that we are saved. And we want to believe the truth. We don't want to believe Lucifer's lies. Okay? The NIV in John says, Jesus says that when the devil lies, he's speaking his native language. I love that translation. And because we are sinful human beings, we tend to lie to ourselves. There's something psychologists call confirmation bias, which is when we have an idea that something is right, we go looking for evidence and we find it. And we may read the same evidence as someone who disagrees with us totally differently because of confirmation bias. And that's what proof texting is, in a way, is a very blatant case of confirmation bias. So we start out with, I want to prove what this is. I have a conclusion. This is right or this is wrong. Or maybe you could even say, I'm just trying to, I think this is right or wrong, and I'm going to find verses that do something. So the first thing is, then after this conclusion, which is not recognized, most of the time they don't think, well, I'm going to prove this in that way. They think they're studying the Bible. Search for key words. It's almost always a word search. And you could always do this with a concordance. But now with the internet and the various search engines, boy, you can do it very rapidly with with a computer, you can find all the occurrences of a particular keyword or phrase. And you can find sometimes related words or phrases. So you search for these keywords. And again, I have it grayed out because you assume the word in the text means what you want it to. You assume it means what you think it means. Now, as we've seen, words can be used in different ways. Probably the easiest one to explain is the word cleave in English. Cleave can mean to split apart, and cleave can mean to cling, has exactly the opposite meanings. And the word fast also has those as similar opposite meanings. To make something fast or to stand fast. They make in sailing, they say make a line fast. They mean make it so that it won't move. But of course, fast can also mean to move rapidly. Or it can mean to do without food. I was fasting today. So until the word can be used in many ways. And when we do a word search, we tend to look for words. We think we know what they mean, and we find them in the Bible and say, there it is. That word is what I was looking for. And he says this, and therefore this is evidence. And that's the next step, is simply we cite as evidence. We say, well, there it is. This text is proof of what I'm trying to establish. The problem with this is you may notice there's a gap between the assuming the word means what it means and means what you want it to, and citing it as evidence. And let's take a look, because I want to show you there's a parallel column, but it's not entirely the same. And you'll see the similarities and differences. If you're going to use a text as evidence, you begin consciously with a hypothesis, not with a conclusion. You don't assume that what you believe is correct. You say, is this correct? If then is a hypothesis. If the Bible supports this, then it is true. So that's the first big difference. Using text as evidence, you begin with a hypothesis, with a question, not with an answer. That's the first thing. The next step is search for keywords and concepts. Keywords is fine, but there are passages which don't contain the word you're interested in, which can shed light upon the topic you're interested in. One of the ones we hear a lot about today is immigration. And it's we'll hear the texts that use the word stranger or foreigner or alien. And they'll go through that and they'll say, be kind to the alien and so forth. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is they're using it as proof text. And as you'll see what the problem is when we get down toward the bottom, which is there are other passages which are narrative, or in one case, a prayer, which does not address the issue that is being of foreigners and aliens directly in that sense, but which sheds light upon it. And people generally gloss over those. What I call that is two-dimensional interpretation instead of three-dimensional, because you forget the other concepts, the stories, the narratives, the prayers, the poetry. There's all kinds of things which can shed light on a particular issue. And we need to look at all of us. But as we go forward, you'll see what that means in detail. I'm trying to get this really done in a timely fashion. So instead of just assuming that the words are being used the way we think they are, what words did the author use? For example, in the text we're talking about, if you love me, keep my commandments. Does Jesus use the Greek word that literally means command, or does it mean directive, or does it mean instruction? There are lots of words that it might mean. And so we look it up. The first thing is it's using the Greek word entole, which in fact is the word command. It's most often translated commands. So that's fine. The author did use the word. But sometimes you'll find the law that was nailed to the cross in Colossians, for example, it has nothing to do with the law. It's a bill of indebtedness. It's a whole different thing. And so it's important to start with, what words did the author use? If we're if we're going to ask the question of how did the author intend to be understood, how did he understand it, and how did he expect his audience to receive it, we have to go back first to the actual words. Fortunately, today that's readily available online. You can get Greek interlinears, you can get all kinds of things, and there are Strong's and other concordances will help you go through and look at the meanings and the range of possible meanings, the different applications of the words, both in Hebrew and in Greek. So what words did the author use? That's the first part. And as I say, in John 14:15, Jesus, when he says, if you love me, keep my commandments, he does in fact use the word most commonly translated commandments. So that far, we're on the same page with the interpretation. But I had to enlarge this because now there's a step that was left out. Assume that assume the word the text means what you want it to and cite it as evidence. There are a series of questions. First of all, instead of assuming, we ask, what words did the author use? Then, are they defined explicitly or contextually? That is to say, is there a text that says this is what it means? And as we saw, there is one for this text. This is my commandment. Okay? This is my commandment. That's an explicit definition. But sometimes it's explained. It's defined contextually. In fact, most of our words, I mentioned cleave and fast, for example, and the only way you can know for sure which word is which meaning of that word is used is by looking at the context. It's the context that tells you. And there's so many examples of this one. There are words, for example, the word read, read, and read in English. You can't even know how to pronounce it until you know what the context is. And there are others, lead, lead, and led, because they're different things. Lead is to go in front and bring people along with you. Led is a metal, because the LAD that means to have the past tense of to lead is LED. So anyway, so you have to know the context, or you don't even know how to pronounce certain words in English. Also, are they defined explicitly or contextually? Well, if the answer is no, then what you do is you expand the context. And by that I mean, now we have this entire pericope, this section of John, where Jesus is preparing his disciples for his death. And so it's John 13, the end of the chapter, through 17. This is all one topic. So if we didn't find, and it was John 14 was where this occurred, we don't find the definition of John 14, then we look in the rest of that speech. And as I said, that's where it is. In the rest of that speech or lecture, or whatever you want to call it, sermon, Jesus uses the term repeatedly and defines it. This is what I command you. This is my commandment. These are what I'm commanding you with, that you love one another. So you expand your context. If it's not found in the same basic section, then you would go to the larger context. In this case, it is in the Gospel of John. So you'd look throughout the whole Gospel of John. You wouldn't look to Mark and Luke to define it. Now, there might be some examples where that was true. For example, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you may have the same episode. And to some degree, not a lot, you can help understand the episode in each of the three books by consulting the others. But first, before you even do that, you need to understand how does it function within the book where it was written, because it's what Mark meant that determines what it means in Mark, and so forth. So here we have, again, it's easily defined here because it fits in this general section. But if it weren't, we'd go next to the Gospel of John. And if it wasn't in the Gospel of John, we would then go to the John's epistles, because they're by the same author. So the same types of thoughts, and indeed, the same types of themes do tend to recur in the epistles and in Revelation and in John. Lastly, I would go to Revelation when it comes to the Apostle John, because Revelation is an apocalyptic book and it's quite different. But there is one particular item I can think of that is common to both John and Revelation and is almost nowhere else in the New Testament. So that's how you expand the context. If you can't find it within the works of the individual, then you'd find it in their contemporaries. For example, the other Gospels. If you can't find the definition, you're not sure based on the works of that one person. For example, Paul has many things. You would expand it, and eventually you can go to the whole Bible. But that's a last resort. We tend to do that first. We understand all this, and what we're doing is we're bypassing that second step of exegesis, and we're bypassing biblical theology by ignoring what was said by other people at the same time, what was believed generally at that time. Anyway, here we are. So is it defined explicitly or contextually? In our case, the answer is yes, which is really handy. Does that usage support your hypothesis? The hypothesis in this particular case is that when Jesus says, love me, keep my commandments, that he's talking about keeping the 10 commandments, the law. And the problem is that it doesn't. He's saying love one another, which is at the base, we've seen in Deuteronomy of the law. But it is not the 10 commandments themselves. It's about this loving your Lord your God. That's the commandment that's being referenced, being echoed here. And if that supports our hypothesis, then we're in good shape. If it doesn't, then we have to say, does it oppose your hypothesis? Because it might mean the opposite or something different. In this case, it doesn't mean the 10 commandments, so it doesn't fit. It can't be used that way. And that's how we know that essentially it's proof texting. Now, it isn't a terrible case of it because there is some relationship between the two. But it is still a misuse of the text slightly, and they're really careful here. So if it doesn't oppose it, and it doesn't, so we had a no to support and a no to oppose, then it's irrelevant to this issue. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to anything at all. It just means that the hypothesis, the question we've been asking, it doesn't speak to that. And there's lots of times when that happens. And the fair answer of the interpreter is this text does not speak to that issue. All right, moving right along. Now we get to the bottom line. And here's where another distinction between the two, the honest exegete and the proof texter. The proof texter has skipped all these questions. Is it defined? Are the words defined? And does that usage, the way they're defined, does it support or oppose what you're trying to prove? He just skipped all that, assuming that it does, and cites it as evidence. The really conscientious Bible interpreter, which I hope is me, and I hope you want to be, then has to say either yes, it supports, or it may be contrary, unless it simply doesn't speak. So those are your three endpoints. It supports the position, the hypothesis I'm pursuing. It opposes the hypothesis, so it's contrary evidence, or it doesn't speak to the issue at all. Those are the three basic options. Now, I could elaborate on this chart endlessly and just about, but this is a real good way of telling the difference between using the text as evidence in an appropriate way and proof texting, just grabbing something and making it fit. So you want to look at the whole chart? I will show you that. Oh, there we go. There it is. And you can see the difference, the process of the person who's the serious student using text as evidence is a good deal more complex. And it allows for expanding the context. It allows for three possible outcomes. Yes, this supports what I'm saying. No, this doesn't. It is contrary evidence, or it's irrelevant to the hypothesis. Well, so we can say that the law there is not the 10 Commandment law, so it doesn't support that usage. Does it oppose the usage? Well, yes, it does in a mild sense. It's not exactly the opposite. It doesn't say you should be lawless, but rather it's saying there's an alternative meaning. And in this case, that alternative meaning, because it is defined explicitly the same way, we would have to say, okay, the preponderance of the evidence is that if you love me, keep my commandments means that you love one another as I have loved you. Is this ironclad? No, nothing human probably is, but it comes very close to it. We have very strong evidence in support of our position. Now, is it true that if we love God, we will keep the Ten Commandments? Of course we will. But that's like saying, I love my wife, so I don't commit adultery. Well, there's a lot more to loving your wife than not committing adultery. And that's the problem with the law. The law, the Ten Commandment law, is a very basic thing. But both in Deuteronomy and here in John, we find the same thing, which is that the impetus behind the law, as I've said, is to protect a relationship, in this case, a particular relationship, the relationship between God and his people. But of course, the Ten Commandments law has two tables. One is the relationship between God and his people, and the other one is the relationship among his people. No murder, no adultery, no stealing. Those are ways in which a society can have trust and can have shalom, can have peace. So that it affects both ways. But you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind, all your being, basically. And that is the impetus for the law. The impetus for all good laws, again, is to protect relationships, and that includes, or maybe I should say, this is founded upon that simple fact in Scripture as well. If we love God, we will love one another. He's not commanding us to do this, but rather saying, this is what it means to love me. This is how you demonstrate your love for me. And if we're going to continue to have a loving relationship with anybody, that has to be demonstrated. It's also what James means when he says, show me your faith by your works. Don't just tell me you love God. Show me you love God. So that's what that is about. Well, that's a pretty good, because he first loved us. That's why, and that's how we can love one another. It's because he has shown us. He came to this earth, but before that, he intervened in saving his people. God is continually showing us what it means to love. And the correct response is to love him in return. Finally, proof text is evidence. When a text is used in a way that accurately reflects the author's original intention, it is not proof texting. It is supporting evidence. And that's what we want to do. Rightly dividing, as Paul says to Timothy. Orthotomeo, to cut straight, to be a straight shooter, if you will. That's what God wants. And to do that, we have to learn how to there are procedures we go through in order to keep ourselves from deceiving ourselves. I said, this is not about, he's trying to deceive us, because I don't think that's the case. And quite the contrary. He was making a point, took a shortcut. But with too many shortcuts, and you end up, and you know not where. And so that's why we want to learn how to avoid it for ourselves. Well, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, our number of viewers is up significantly. There are now 6 ways I have to support this ministry. If you want to do this, pray for us. Click on like. Again, the more likes there are, the more YouTube will recommend this to other people, and the more people will have the opportunity. If you think this is worthwhile, let other people know. Share it. That's a very simple thing to do. You can share it you can share it on your own feed. You can share it on someone else's feed. Wherever you think it would be appreciated. And the more that just simply gives us more exposure, more people have a chance to see it and a chance to partake. If you want to know that every time when something comes out, subscribe. If you want to write a comment, and it can be, as long as it's civil, it could be it's criticism if you'd like to see things slightly differently. For example, right now I'm trying to compress so that this takes 30 minutes or so. And finally, you can become a patron if you want to at www.patreon.com/Bible Journeys. You can just look up Bible Journeys. You'll find me. And you can contact me at BibleJourneys@yahoo.com. Well, thank you for coming. And I hope that you will support us as the Lord wills. And I hope you're enjoying these lessons, that they're useful. They're helping you on your particular journey as you walk with God. And so I hope again we'll meet in another 6 or 7 days, God willing, as we embark on yet another Bible journey.